Legacy, a gift, or a burden? That's the question haunting Alana, a biracial student granted entry into the elite world of Crestwood University, a place steeped in tradition and shadowed by a history of exclusion. When Alana discovers the truth behind the legacy admissions program, her dream turns into a moral reckoning. Will she accept the privilege offered or challenge a system rigged against deserving students of color? Stay tuned to find out. And before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. If this story of privilege, responsibility, and the courage to challenge the status quo resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Alana held the acceptance letter, its creamy weight a stark contrast to the worn, paint-chipped windowsill it rested upon. Sunlight, filtered through the grime-streaked glass of her bedroom window, cast a hazy glow on the embossed Crestwood University crest. A majestic griffin, wings outstretched, clutching a scroll in its talons. It seemed to glare at her, a symbol of a world she'd only glimpsed from afar, a world of privilege and opportunity she'd dared to dream of, but never truly believed she could reach. "We are pleased to offer you," the letter began, the formal, almost archaic language blurring as tears welled in Alana's eyes, hot and stinging. She blinked, trying to refocus, the words swimming back into view. Acceptance, full scholarship. It was real. Crestwood. The very name conjured images of ivy-covered walls, ancient, hallowed halls echoing with the murmur of intellectual discourse, and a future shimmering with 1,000 possibilities. A future her mother, a tireless social worker navigating the labyrinthine complexities of the inner city, had fought tooth and nail to provide, sacrificing her own aspirations for her daughters. A future her white grandfather, a distinguished alumnus of Crestwood, class of '68, had spoken of in hushed, reverent tones, his eyes gleaming with a pride that Alana had always found perplexing. He'd framed his diploma, a testament to his success, and hung it in his study, its presence a constant reminder of a world Alana could only observe from the outside. "Legacy," he'd called it, his voice thick with a pride that bordered on arrogance. At the time, the word had sounded like a golden ticket, a shortcut to a world otherwise inaccessible, a key that unlocked doors otherwise firmly closed to someone like her. Now, holding the acceptance letter in her trembling hand, it felt heavy, a weight pressing down on her chest, a weight of expectation, of responsibility, a weight she hadn't fully understood until this very moment. It was a legacy built on a foundation she hadn't been a part of creating, a legacy intertwined with a history she was only beginning to understand. Alana's mother, Evelyn, a woman whose quiet strength and unwavering resilience had always been a source of both comfort and inspiration, greeted the news with a complex mix of joy and apprehension. She rushed into Alana's room, drawn by her daughter's choked sob, which could have been either joy or despair. Seeing the letter, Evelyn's face broke into a wide, radiant smile. She hugged Alana tightly, her arms strong and warm, her voice thick with emotion. "This is amazing, baby girl. You've worked so hard. You deserve this." She pulled back slightly, cupping Alana's face in her hands, her thumbs gently wiping away the tears. But a shadow flickered in her eyes, a fleeting hint of a concern Alana couldn't quite decipher, a flicker of something unspoken that lingered in the air. That night, they celebrated with a modest dinner, take-out Chinese from their favorite local spot, Mr. Chen's, spread out on a worn tablecloth in their small dining room. The aroma of garlic and ginger filled the air, a familiar comfort amidst the swirling emotions of the evening. Her grandfather Thomas, usually a man of few words, his emotions held close, spoke at length about his time at Crestwood, his voice brimming with a potent nostalgia. He regaled them with stories of late-night study sessions fueled by lukewarm coffee and fierce intellectual debates, of clandestine parties in the forbidden halls of the old library, and of the lifelong friendships forged within those hallowed halls. He painted a romantic, almost idealized picture of a vibrant intellectual community, a place where young minds were sharpened, futures were shaped, and lifelong bonds were formed. Alana, caught up in the heady excitement of her acceptance, allowed herself to believe, just for that night, that she, too, would find her place in this idyllic world. She didn't see the carefully curated nature of his memories, the selective omissions, the glossed-over realities. She was too caught up in the dream to notice the cracks beginning to appear in the facade. Alana arrived at Crestwood in late August, the humid New England air thick with the anticipation of a new academic year. The campus was even more breathtaking than she'd imagined, a sprawling tapestry of verdant lawns, meticulously manicured flower beds, imposing Gothic architecture, and an atmosphere that hummed with an almost palpable sense of history and tradition. The weight of centuries of scholarship seemed to hang in the air, a tangible pressure that both exhilarated and intimidated her. Yet beneath the polished surface of this picture-perfect world, Alana began to detect a subtle, unsettling unease, a dissonance between the image Crestwood projected and the reality she was beginning to perceive. During orientation, a carefully orchestrated affair designed to showcase Crestwood's purported commitment to diversity and inclusivity, Alana noticed a recurring, disquieting pattern. The smiling faces in the glossy brochures, the diverse array of students featured in the professionally produced welcome videos, the alumni highlighted as shining examples of Crestwood's success. They were overwhelmingly white. The few faces of color sprinkled throughout felt tokenistic, strategically placed to create an illusion of diversity that didn't reflect the actual demographics of the student body. In the welcome address, delivered in the grand, echoing auditorium, the university president, a charismatic man with a practiced air of sincerity, spoke passionately about Crestwood's unwavering commitment to diversity and inclusion. He cited impressive-sounding statistics about the increasing number of students of color and first-generation college students admitted in recent years. He spoke of creating a welcoming and inclusive environment for all students, regardless of their background. But as Alana looked around the auditorium, at the sea of predominantly white faces, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something didn't quite add up. The diversity seemed performative, a carefully curated facade designed to project an image of inclusivity that didn't match the reality on the ground. The president's words felt hollow, ringing with a false sincerity that left Alana feeling uneasy. The whispers started subtly, like the first insidious tendrils of a creeping vine, during late-night conversations in the dorm, in hushed tones exchanged between students huddled over textbooks in the library, in furtive glances exchanged across crowded lecture halls. Alana overheard snippets of conversations, fragments of whispered gossip about how certain students had gotten in because of their family, how legacy was just a code word for maintaining the status quo, for preserving the privilege of the elite. She began to notice the subtle cliques, the unspoken hierarchies, the invisible lines that divided the student body. The whispers, though quiet, carried a weight that began to press down on Alana, fueling her growing sense of unease. One afternoon, while researching a history assignment on the evolution of higher education in America, Alana found herself in the dusty, dimly lit depths of the university archives. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and decaying bindings, a scent that spoke of forgotten stories and buried truths. She was sifting through a stack of bound student newspapers from the 1990s, their pages brittle and yellowed with age, when a particular headline, printed in bold, stark type, jumped out at her. "Legacy of Privilege, a look at Crestwood's admissions practices," it proclaimed, the words seeming to burn themselves into Alana's retinas. The article, meticulously researched and boldly written by a student journalist named Sarah Chen, exposed the stark, uncomfortable reality of Crestwood's legacy admissions program. It revealed, with painstaking detail and supporting data, that legacy students, overwhelmingly white and wealthy, were admitted at a significantly higher rate than non-legacy students, even when their academic qualifications were demonstrably lower. The article cited numerous cases of highly qualified students of color being denied admission, while less qualified legacy students, primarily white, were accepted. It detailed the opaque nature of the admissions process, the lack of transparency and accountability, and the insidious ways in which privilege was perpetuated through generations. Alana felt a chill run down her spine, a prickle of unease that spread through her limbs. The article's findings confirmed her suspicions, giving voice to the whispers she'd heard echoing through the hallowed halls of Crestwood. The legacy advantage, it seemed, wasn't just a leg up, a slight advantage in a competitive process. It was a systemic barrier, a deeply ingrained mechanism that perpetuated inequality and denied opportunities to deserving students of color, students like her. The weight of her grandfather's legacy, the pride he had so readily displayed, now felt like a suffocating burden. The golden ticket, she realized, had been purchased at a price paid by generations of students denied access to the opportunities she had been afforded. The article, a relic of the past, felt shockingly relevant, a stark reminder that the past was not so distant, that its legacy continued to shape the present. The dusty archives, a repository of forgotten stories, had yielded a truth that would change Alana's Crestwood experience forever. Alana, armed with the archived article and a burning sense of injustice, knew she couldn't stay silent. The carefully constructed image of Crestwood, the idyllic world she'd initially envisioned, had crumbled, replaced by a stark awareness of the systemic inequalities that permeated the very foundations of the institution. She felt a growing urgency, a need to connect with others who saw the cracks in the facade, who felt the same simmering discontent. She needed to find her allies. She started attending meetings of the Black Student Union, drawn by the vibrant energy and the sense of shared experience. The discussions, often held in a small, dimly lit room in the student center, were raw and honest, filled with stories of microaggressions, of feeling unseen and unheard in the predominantly white world of Crestwood. She listened intently, absorbing the stories, recognizing the echoes of her own experiences. She attended meetings of the Latinx Student Alliance, where she heard similar stories of exclusion and marginalization, of the struggle to navigate a system that wasn't designed for them. She also joined the First Generation College Students Association, finding solace and solidarity in the shared anxieties and triumphs of navigating the unfamiliar terrain of higher education without the inherited roadmap of family legacy. In these spaces, Alana found a community of students who understood her struggles, who shared her desire for change. She found her voice, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. She shared her own experiences, the weight of her grandfather's legacy, the unsettling whispers she'd overheard, the damning evidence she'd uncovered in the archives. Her vulnerability resonated with others, forging bonds of shared purpose and mutual support. She connected with Maria Rodriguez, a dynamic senior and outspoken advocate for admissions reform. Maria, the daughter of undocumented immigrants, had been initially rejected from Crestwood despite exceptional grades, glowing recommendations, and a compelling personal story of resilience and determination. She gained admission only after a grueling appeal process, supported by a coalition of student activists and community organizations. Maria, with her fiery passion and unwavering commitment to justice exuded a natural leadership that drew others to her. Maria became Alana's mentor, guiding her through the complexities of student activism, sharing her own hard-won experiences, navigating the predominantly white, privileged world of Crestwood. She taught Alana the importance of organizing, of building coalitions, of using her voice to challenge the status quo. She introduced Alana to other student leaders, faculty allies, and community organizers, slowly building a network of support and solidarity. They met late at night in Maria's dorm room, huddled over laptops, strategizing, planning, dreaming of a more just and equitable Crestwood. They were a diverse group, united by their shared experiences of marginalization and their burning desire for change. They were building a movement, one conversation, one meeting, one protest at a time. Alana's grandfather, Thomas, visited for family weekend, a carefully orchestrated celebration of Crestwood tradition. The campus buzzed with an almost frenetic energy, a whirlwind of alumni gatherings, sporting events, and meticulously planned social functions designed to showcase the best of Crestwood. Alana, however, felt a growing unease, a chasm widening between the celebratory atmosphere and the simmering discontent she felt. She knew she couldn't maintain the charade any longer. She couldn't pretend to be the grateful granddaughter basking in the glow of her legacy. She had to confront her grandfather, to challenge the very foundation of the privilege he so readily embraced. During a seemingly celebratory dinner at the university's elegant dining hall, surrounded by the clatter of silverware and the murmur of polite conversation, Alana, emboldened by her newfound activism and the support of her allies, decided to confront him. The conversation started innocuously enough, with Thomas reminiscing about his time at Crestwood, his eyes gleaming with a familiar pride. But as the conversation progressed, Alana steered it towards the topic of legacy admissions, her voice trembling slightly but resolute. She presented the data from the student newspaper article, the stark statistics that exposed the inherent inequities of the system. She shared her own research, the stories she'd heard from fellow students, the growing movement for admissions reform. Her grandfather, initially beaming with pride, his chest puffed out with the weight of his legacy, grew increasingly defensive as she spoke. He argued that legacy admissions were a time-honored tradition, a way of honoring family ties, of maintaining the university's prestigious reputation, of ensuring its continued success. He spoke of the importance of alumni donations, of the financial benefits of maintaining a loyal alumni base. "But Grandpa," Alana countered, her voice rising with emotion, her hands clenching into fists beneath the starched white tablecloth. "What about the families who were never even allowed to create a legacy here? What about the students who are just as qualified, if not more so, but are denied a chance simply because they don't have a wealthy white ancestor who went to Crestwood?" She spoke of the systemic racism embedded within the legacy system, of the generations of students denied access to the opportunities he had taken for granted. The conversation ended in a stalemate, a chasm of understanding separating granddaughter and grandfather. Thomas, his face flushed with anger and disbelief, refused to acknowledge the inherent injustice of the system. Alana, her heart heavy with disappointment, realized that she couldn't change his mind, that he was too entrenched in his own privilege to see the other side. The celebratory dinner, meant to be a symbol of family unity, ended with a rift, a painful reminder of the deep divisions that ran through the very fabric of Crestwood. During homecoming weekend, the culmination of Crestwood's celebratory season, the student activist group, led by Maria and fueled by Alana's passionate advocacy, organized a large-scale protest. The campus, usually buzzing with the cheerful energy of returning alumni, was charged with a different kind of energy, a palpable tension that crackled in the crisp autumn air. Hundreds of students, a diverse coalition of voices and experiences marched across the manicured lawns, their chants echoing through the hallowed halls, disrupting the carefully orchestrated festivities. "End legacy admissions, equal opportunity for all," their voices rang out, a chorus of dissent that shattered the veneer of celebratory unity. Alana, no longer hesitant or afraid, marched in the front lines, holding a sign that read, "Legacy of Exclusion." She felt a surge of empowerment as she marched alongside her fellow students, their voices rising in a unified chorus of dissent. The weight of her grandfather's legacy, which had once felt like a burden, now felt like a source of strength, a catalyst for change. She was reclaiming her legacy, redefining it on her own terms. The protest garnered significant media attention, local news crews capturing the scenes of student activism, the chants and slogans echoing across the airwaves. The images of students marching, their faces filled with passion and determination, were broadcast across the region, putting pressure on the university administration to address the issue. The carefully crafted image of Crestwood, the idyllic world of privilege and opportunity, was being challenged, its carefully guarded secrets exposed to the harsh glare of public scrutiny. The university president, in a carefully worded statement released to the press, acknowledged the students' concerns and promised to review the admissions process. It was a small victory, a first step in a long and arduous journey, but it was a victory nonetheless. The protest, a disruption of the status quo, had forced the administration to acknowledge the growing movement for change. It was a moment of hope, a flicker of possibility in the fight for a more just and equitable Crestwood. The university's review of the legacy admissions program, touted by the president as a genuine effort to address student concerns, quickly revealed itself to be a hollow gesture, a performative act designed to quell the rising tide of dissent without enacting any real change. The committee formed to examine the issue was composed primarily of alumni, wealthy donors and trustees, individuals who had directly benefited from the legacy admission system and had a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. Student representation was minimal, a token gesture towards inclusivity, and the voices of students of color, the very individuals most impacted by the discriminatory practices, were largely ignored. The committee meetings held behind closed doors in the opulent boardroom of the administration building were shrouded in secrecy. The minutes of the meetings, carefully sanitized and devoid of any real substance, were released weeks later, offering vague platitudes about the importance of tradition and the value of a diverse student body. The committee's final report, a glossy document filled with carefully chosen language and strategically selected statistics, concluded that while the legacy admissions program might have some minor flaws, it was, on the whole, a valuable asset to the university. They recommended a few superficial changes, tweaks around the edges of the system that would do nothing to address the fundamental inequities at its core. It was a blatant attempt to maintain the facade of progress while preserving the privilege that underpinned the system. The report was met with outrage by the student activists, a confirmation of their deepest fears that the administration was more concerned with protecting its image than with addressing the systemic injustices within its walls. The superficial review, a carefully orchestrated performance of accountability, only served to fuel the flames of dissent, strengthening their resolve to fight for real change. Frustrated by the university's inaction, its blatant disregard for their concerns, Maria and Alana decided to escalate the fight. They knew that polite requests and carefully worded petitions would not be enough to dismantle a system so deeply entrenched in privilege. They needed to disrupt the carefully curated image of Crestwood to force the administration to confront the uncomfortable realities it had tried so hard to conceal. They decided to organize a sit-in, a direct action that would demand attention, that would force the administration to acknowledge their demands. They chose a highly visible location, the manicured lawn directly outside the president's office, a space usually reserved for official ceremonies and carefully staged photo opportunities. They set up tents, sleeping bags, and study materials, transforming the pristine lawn into a makeshift encampment, a symbol of their unwavering commitment. They vowed to remain there, day and night, rain or shine, until their demands for a truly inclusive and transparent review process were met. They issued a list of demands, a new committee composed of diverse student representation, faculty of color, and independent experts on admissions policies and affirmative action. Full transparency in the review process, including open meetings and access to all relevant data, and a commitment from the administration to implement the committee's recommendations regardless of the outcome. The sit-in began with a small group of dedicated activists, but word quickly spread across campus. Students from all walks of life, drawn by the message of equality and justice, joined the sit-in, swelling the ranks of the protesters. The lawn, once a symbol of Crestwood's carefully cultivated image, became a vibrant hub of student activism, a space for open dialogue, for sharing stories, for building community. The sit-in, a disruptive act of defiance, transformed the heart of Crestwood into a symbol of resistance. As the sit-in gained momentum, attracting increasing media attention and drawing support from students, faculty, and community members, Alana became a target of online harassment. The carefully orchestrated campaign of intimidation, designed to silence her and discredit the movement, began subtly, with anonymous comments on social media posts about the sit-in. Then it escalated quickly. Anonymous accounts using pseudonyms and fake profiles flooded her social media with hateful messages, racial slurs, and thinly veiled threats. The attacks were relentless, designed to intimidate her into silence, to erode her confidence, to break her spirit. They questioned her motives, her intelligence, her character. They attacked her family, her background, her very right to be at Crestwood. The online harassment spilled over into the real world, with anonymous flyers plastered around campus, bearing her picture and distorted versions of her words, attempting to paint her as a radical agitator, a troublemaker disrupting the peaceful harmony of Crestwood. Alana, shaken but determined, refused to back down. The personal attacks, though painful and deeply unsettling, only strengthened her resolve. She reported the harassment to campus security, filing a formal complaint detailing the online abuse and the threatening flyers. She also spoke publicly about the cyberbullying, using her platform to raise awareness about the insidious tactics used to silence marginalized voices. She refused to be intimidated, to let the fear of personal attacks derail the fight for justice. She knew she wasn't alone, that she had the support of her allies, the strength of her convictions, and the unwavering belief that their cause was just. The personal attacks meant to break her only served to make her stronger, more determined than ever to fight for a more inclusive and equitable Crestwood. The sit-in continued into its second week, the small encampment on the President's lawn becoming a permanent fixture of the Crestwood landscape. The students, huddled in their tents, braving the increasingly chilly autumn nights, showed no signs of wavering. The administration, however, remained stubbornly resistant to their demands, issuing non-committal statements about ongoing dialogues and internal reviews, while doing nothing to address the core issues raised by the protesters. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lawn, a figure emerged from the president's office. It wasn't the president, as the students had anticipated, but someone far more unexpected. It was Professor Davis, a renowned history professor known for his rigorous scholarship, his captivating lectures, and his outspoken advocacy for social justice. Professor Davis, a quiet but powerful force on campus, had been quietly following the student protests, impressed by their dedication, their strategic organizing, and their unwavering commitment to their cause. He'd been particularly struck by Alana's courage, her willingness to speak truth to power, her resilience in the face of personal attacks. He'd seen the vicious online harassment she'd endured, the attempts to discredit her and silence her voice. He knew he had to do something. He approached the encampment, his expression a mixture of concern and admiration. He spoke to Alana and Maria, expressing his support for their cause, acknowledging the legitimacy of their demands. He offered his assistance, his expertise, his connections. He had spent decades studying social movements, understanding the dynamics of power, the strategies for effective change. He offered to connect Alana with influential alumni who sympathized with their cause, with legal experts who could advise them on their rights, and with journalists who could amplify their voices. He offered to use his position within the faculty to pressure the administration to advocate for a fair and transparent review process. Professor Davis's support was a turning point in the protest. His presence, his reputation, his willingness to publicly align himself with the students lent legitimacy and credibility to their cause. His involvement signaled a shift in the power dynamics, a crack in the seemingly impenetrable wall of the administration's resistance. Alana, initially surprised by his unexpected support, felt a surge of hope, a renewed sense of purpose. Professor Davis, with his quiet wisdom and unwavering commitment to justice, became an invaluable ally, a mentor, a guide through the treacherous terrain of institutional change. As the sit-in continued to gain momentum, garnering increasing media attention and putting pressure on the university, Alana's activism began to strain her relationship with her grandfather. Thomas, deeply invested in the image of Crestwood, saw Alana's protests as a personal betrayal, a tarnishing of the family name. He couldn't understand her motivations, her willingness to challenge the very institution that had given him so much. He saw her activism as a rejection of his values, of his legacy. He pleaded with her to stop the protests, arguing that she was jeopardizing her future, damaging her reputation, and alienating powerful people who could help her career. He spoke of the importance of conformity, of respecting tradition, of working within the system to achieve change. He couldn't grasp the concept of systemic injustice, of the need to dismantle oppressive structures, of the power of collective action. Alana, torn between her loyalty to her family and her commitment to social justice, found herself caught in a painful dilemma. She loved her grandfather, respected his accomplishments, but she couldn't reconcile his worldview with her own. She tried to explain her motivations, the injustices she'd witnessed, the need for change, but her words fell on deaf ears. He saw only a rebellious granddaughter, a naive idealist, blinded by the influence of radical activists. The rift between them deepened, the once close bond strained by the weight of their conflicting beliefs. Alana felt a profound sense of loss, a grieving for the relationship they once had. But she knew she couldn't compromise her values. She couldn't betray the trust of her allies. She couldn't abandon the fight for a more just and equitable future. With Professor Davis's guidance and connections, Alana gained access to previously confidential university data on admissions practices. Professor Davis, using his network of contacts within the administration, had learned of a disgruntled employee in the admissions office, someone who had witnessed firsthand the discriminatory practices and was willing to leak the data. The data, meticulously compiled and spanning decades, revealed a clear pattern of systemic bias in favor of legacy applicants, particularly those from wealthy, white families. It showed how qualified students of color were consistently denied admission, their applications often dismissed with perfunctory explanations, while less qualified legacy students were given preferential treatment. The data also exposed a disturbing correlation between alumni donations and admissions decisions, suggesting a quid pro quo system where wealth and influence bought access to Crestwood's hallowed halls. Alana and Professor Davis worked late into the night, poring over the data, verifying its accuracy, and preparing it for release. They knew the potential impact of this information, the explosive power it held to expose the truth about Crestwood's admissions practices. They decided to leak the data anonymously to a trusted journalist at a major national newspaper, someone known for their investigative reporting and their commitment to social justice. The data leak, timed strategically to coincide with a major alumni fundraising event, caused a national uproar. The headlines screamed across newspapers and websites, "Crestwood's legacy of shame, privilege buys access, the price of admission." The carefully constructed image of Crestwood, the idyllic world of meritocracy and opportunity, shattered under the weight of the damning evidence. The university administration, caught off guard by the leak and unprepared for the ensuing media firestorm, scrambled to contain the damage. The data leak, a carefully orchestrated act of resistance, exposed the truth about Crestwood to the world, forcing the administration to finally confront the systemic injustices it had tried so hard to conceal. The university administration, facing mounting public pressure, a barrage of negative media coverage, and the unwavering determination of the student protesters, finally realized that they could no longer ignore the demands for change. The data leak had been a devastating blow, stripping away the carefully crafted veneer of prestige and exposing the ugly reality of Crestwood's discriminatory admissions practices to the world. Alumni donations, the lifeblood of the institution, began to dry up as donors, embarrassed and outraged by the revelations, withdrew their support. The university's reputation, once a source of pride and a powerful magnet for prospective students, was tarnished, perhaps irreparably. The Board of Trustees, a group of powerful individuals accustomed to operating in the shadows, were forced into the harsh glare of public scrutiny. The president, his carefully worded statements and empty promises now ringing hollow, realized that his position was untenable. He resigned, a casualty of the growing storm. The Board of Trustees, recognizing the need for decisive action, announced the formation of a truly independent task force to conduct a comprehensive and transparent review of the legacy admissions program. This time, there would be no carefully orchestrated performance of accountability. The task force, unlike the previous committee, was composed of a diverse group of stakeholders, including student representatives chosen by the student body, faculty of color with expertise in issues of diversity and inclusion, independent experts on admissions policies and affirmative action, and community leaders representing the diverse populations surrounding Crestwood. Alana and Maria were appointed as student representatives, their voices finally given a seat at the table. The power dynamics had shifted. The students, once marginalized and dismissed, now held a position of influence, their voices carrying weight in the decisions that would shape the future of Crestwood. The task force, after months of deliberation, public hearings, and rigorous data analysis, released its final report. The report, a meticulously documented and unflinchingly honest assessment of Crestwood's admissions practices, confirmed what Alana and her fellow activists had long known. The legacy admissions program was a discriminatory system that perpetuated inequality and denied opportunities to deserving students from underrepresented backgrounds. The report detailed the history of the legacy program, its roots in a bygone era of exclusion and privilege, and its enduring impact on the demographics of the student body. It provided statistical evidence of the significant advantage afforded to legacy applicants, particularly white and wealthy students, and the systemic disadvantages faced by students of color, first-generation students, and students from low-income backgrounds. The task force, in a bold and decisive move, recommended phasing out the legacy admissions program entirely. They proposed replacing it with a need-based financial aid program designed to support students from underrepresented backgrounds, providing them with the financial resources necessary to access and succeed at Crestwood. They also recommended a series of reforms to the admissions process designed to increase transparency, ensure fairness, and prioritize diversity and inclusion. The university's Board of Trustees, facing intense public scrutiny and recognizing the urgent need for change, voted to accept the task force's recommendations. It was a historic moment, a victory for the student activists, a testament to their unwavering commitment to justice and equality. Alana, watching the vote unfold, felt a wave of emotion wash over her, a mix of relief, exhaustion, and profound satisfaction. The fight had been long and arduous, filled with setbacks and challenges, but they had prevailed. They had changed the system, created a more just and equitable future for generations of Crestwood students to come. Years later, Alana, now a successful lawyer advocating for educational equity, returned to Crestwood for her 10-year reunion. The campus, though still beautiful, felt different. There was a palpable shift in the atmosphere, a greater sense of diversity and inclusion. The student body was more representative of the world outside the ivy-covered walls, a testament to the transformative changes that had taken place. As she walked across the manicured lawn, the site of their historic sit-in, she saw a plaque commemorating the student protests that had changed Crestwood forever. She smiled, a quiet sense of pride swelling in her chest. She reflected on her tumultuous journey at Crestwood, the challenges she had faced, the allies she had found, the battles she had fought. She realized that her experience had transformed her understanding of legacy. True legacy, she understood, wasn't about inherited privilege or family name, but about the impact one makes on the world, about the courage to challenge injustice, about the unwavering commitment to build a more equitable future for all. She had not only inherited a legacy, she had created one, a legacy of courage, of resilience, of change, a legacy that would continue to inspire generations of Crestwood students to come. What did you think of Alana's story? How would you have navigated such a complex situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, be sure to subscribe for more stories of courage, resilience, and the power of fighting for what's right.